Welcome to Political Trade Secrets, an inside look at campaigns and politics, where we pull back the curtain, look under the hood, and investigate all aspects of politics and how elections are won. Now, here's your host, Dustin Olson.
And welcome to Political Trade Secrets. I'm your host, Dustin Olson. Thank you to everybody for joining us from across the internet right now. We are live streaming on 12 different platforms, and you are here to learn about how to be a great political leader. And we really do love inspiring people across this country to be the most effective citizens possible, as well to be powerful political leaders in their community, in their state, and in their country. So thank you very much for being a part of this conversation. And to join the conversation in a greater way, you can, whether you're on YouTube, you're on Facebook, you're on Twitter, wherever you're at, you can post a comment or question. Those will all magically come back to us here. I see we already have a good morning. Thank you very much. And just think of all the amazing Americans, amazing patriots out there who are joining you to be a part of this conversation. So if you'd like to also join the conversation in a greater way, you can go to our website. We're live streaming the show right now on our website as well. It's politicaltradesecrets.com, and you can go there right now, sign up to be a Political Trade Secrets insider, and get exclusive stuff there at politicaltradesecrets.com. So please join us there. We send out a weekly email. We send out updates on things. We send out all of our material condensed into one place so that you can go and you can check it out in your own leisure. So thank you very much to everybody who has already done that. We have quite a few people who are part of our insiders group. And another way that you can get the freshest, absolutely freshest political trade secrets is to text us. You can text me at 202-918-3345. Again, that's 202-918-3345 to get the freshest political trade secrets. We send out a link before every show to let people know what we're going to be talking about. And today, we're going to be talking about the 5 forces of visual persuasion. And if you ever heard the term, a picture is worth 1,000 words, we're going to be talking about how that's the case, whether it's in an actual print picture or if it's in a video or if it's even in visual language, which we'll talk about. And then we'll talk about the different things that have an impact on each of those. So without further ado, one of our favorite moments in the entire show is when we introduce the high priest of Ohio politics, America's sweetheart, the Buckeyes' best, your co-host and mine, Sean Bulldog Bartley. Sean, how the heck are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Good morning to you. Good morning to everyone out there. Really looking forward to a great episode today. This is a topic that gives us consternation every time in a campaign for 2 reasons. One is most campaigns don't seem to have enough pictures.
Yeah, it's a very practical thing. We will have a practical guide to this.
Yes.
It does make a difference in the campaign if you don't have the pictures to tell the story.
And we're going to be talking about more than pictures today. And we talk about it in a lot of different ways on this show, how you can be paint a picture either with your pictures, with video, or with your words. And I do think all of those are going to be critical. And they are critical. And when you really get to the heart of it, that's where you can really cut through and make a difference. And that's really what our everything we do is about, is giving people the ability to break through. So this episode today is going to be an important one for that. And so really looking forward to that. And one way that you can be a part of this is to bring your comments and questions right to the forefront. You can do that on any platform you're on. Do it during the show if you're with us live. Do that. We can address it. Might be able to address it right here while we're on the show. If it's after we're live, we do go back and answer those. So do that so that we can be in communication. See what's out there, what you're trying to discover out of this, and it might also inform future episodes. So a great way to do that.
Well, as I said at the beginning of the show, what we're doing here is we're really out to empower conservatives, really, to be the most effective citizens possible and to be powerful political leaders for their community and for our country. And one of the ways that you can help with that is you can like the show, you can love the show, you can wow the show, you can retweet the show, and you can share the show. You can join the share force. So join ShareForce, make a difference, reignite American patriotism, and you can do that by simply sharing or retweeting wherever you're at. If you're on Twitter, if you're on Facebook, you're on YouTube, share the program, and it will help inspire others to consider. You know what? I may want to run for office, or I may not want to run for office, but because I'm an American citizen, I get to be a political leader for my community, and that's something that's part of my right as a citizen, is to speak up, to show up, and to step up, and that is for you to take on. And who knows, when you share the program, who you might actually inspire to be that leader for their community. So please do share the program. We do really appreciate it. I think we already have quite a few people doing that. I see someone's giving a shout out to sharing the share force. All right, that's excellent. And there you go. And there we go. Some more good morning. So thank you very much for the comments, and we really do appreciate it. And thank you for sharing the program.
Yeah. And look, if you are thinking about running for office, or you want to know what it takes to be a powerful political leader in your neck of the woods, or you really want to just take it to the next level wherever you are, reach out to us at Olson Strategies. It's OLSON strategies.com. You can email me at Sean, SEAN, at olsonstrategies.com, or Dustin at olsonstrategies.com. We would love to have a conversation with you about really what it takes to run for office, what it takes to be a powerful political leader, and really bringing in some of the concepts we're going to talk about today, and having what it is that you would like to accomplish for your neck of the woods. Take that to the next level and actually have it not just break through, but come to fruition. And that's something that you can do by having that conversation with us and working with us. So we'd love to do both.
Yeah, no, I just love working with new candidates, or even someone who's been at like the local level and they're looking to run at the federal level or maybe the state level. We really do enjoy helping them expand their political leadership as well, and learning what their vision is and walking through that and helping them expand that and to communicate that to their community. It really is something that we love to do and appreciate it. And so thank you for everybody who's adding your comments today. Keep adding those throughout the program. We really do appreciate it. So Sean, let's before we get into the program, tomorrow, just a programming note, tomorrow we are going to be having on the program the author of Beyond Woke, the author of Springtime for Snowflakes, and the author of this book, Google Archipelago, Dr. Michael Rechtenwald. He was known as the anti-PC NYU prof on Twitter. He's a former Marxist college professor who was on campuses as social justice and the wokeness just kept engulfing like the blob, just like taking over academia. And he finally started criticizing it through this Twitter handle, and then he was outed, and then NYU suspended him immediately when that happened. And unfortunately, that for them, they lost a great professor, but for the rest of us, he came out and he started speaking. He started writing about this kind of culture on campuses, and then expanding into looking at algorithms, AI, how that's affecting companies, and in politics, how woke capitalism is affecting America today. So we're going to be talking about that. So tomorrow, Sean, what are some of the things that you're most interested in learning from Dr. Rechtenwald?
Yeah, well, I really his personal story is amazing. I mean, I think it used to be that nothing interfered with tenure, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think we learned one thing that might not being woke enough.
Yeah.
I'm interested in seeing how how the changes in academia, or really just discovering that for himself, really brought this about, because he is a prolific author.
Hmm.
And so,
He has two books out just this year: Thought Criminal and Beyond Woke.
yeah, it's um, and and the work is phenomenal too. I mean,
Mhm.
it's not like he's just churning them out just to have another book. So,
Yeah. It's
um,
interesting, at NYU, he was in the liberal arts side of the school, and he was the liberal studies writing professor. So specifically, what he did is he trained college students on how to write, and so
yeah,
he's a pretty good writer himself. And
and
every single sentence seems to be packed with a lot of goodness.
yeah, absolutely. And so I'm looking forward to that. I'm also looking forward. I do think we've talked a lot about woke capitalism on this show and what's going on there. I really want to get to the heart of that. I think when we talk about it is the thing that seems to be keeping this wokeism going. Like that, because sometimes, without it, I do think there would be um, a little bit of an ebb to this, and we might be heading that way anyway. But it does seem like it's on the uptick. So that's what I'm interested in tomorrow, and then Friday we're going to have another guest on, Deborah Gordon, really talk about um, how activism and faith and politics and the intersection of all that, and why it's important to be vocal, to be out there, and to really be making a difference in your community, however you're doing it,
Hmm.
but really get to what you believe, and get to that in a way that can make a difference for you and your community. And so I think that's going to be a fascinating episode, another opportunity for people to weigh in and get involved in the
Yeah.
conversation.
What I really appreciate with having Deborah Gordon on is that we're having real people from across the country, and they have great insights. This is why you can be a citizen leader in our country. You get to, as a citizen of this country, step up, show up, speak up, and she's someone like that. And she has a really, I think, interesting message to folks: is to get clear about what you believe, to discover what you believe, and when you are really clear on that, the actions that you are going to take, the ways you're going to speak up are going to uh, maybe, I don't know if they'll be obvious, but I think they're going to be much more clear to you. So it'd be interesting to get her thoughts on that. Really, beliefs, faith, and politics, and how those come together. So I'm looking forward to that. This has been an excellent week of shows, and really do appreciate you, Sean, and everything you've added to it, and then the audience and everything that they have added to it this week as well.
Yeah. Well, I think, and really getting to what you believe and being able to discern is a great lead in to what we're talking about today.
Yeah, the
So,
five forces of visual persuasion.
yeah. But before we get into that, let's talk about some of the forces that are at play that we probably don't particularly like.
Yeah, so this is the thing. Our brains are given towards visuals. So if I say to you right now, think of a pink elephant. Everyone out there can think of that. If I say, think of your high school football stadium, if you had football in high school, I imagine you're imagining it right now. You can see it, and you're not reading the words of football stadium, and this is you're thinking of it, and you are seeing it in your mind. Your high school football stadium. I can see mine. So
Yeah.
you start to you just see that. So I have a great power by just suggesting something to you to think about, which shows the power of how our brain is so visual and how it thinks through things. And one of the downsides to this is that most of the big media hoaxes we've seen in America over the past few years all use this visual component, and oftentimes it's context that's brought out of it from that, but it shows the persuasive power and the force of visuals that plus the little bit of context manipulation. A couple of them, the biggest one I would say is the Find People hoax, where you have Donald Trump talking about the people on either side of the statue issue, and the media took off the next sentence, which he said was, and I condemned totally all the neo-Nazis and white nationalists. So they cut off that second part, but you see him say the first part, and when they set it up as though it's something that he's supporting terrible people, when the media sets it up with the context, you see him saying something that they are telling you he's saying, and it is very powerful in how it's done. And if you remember, Joe Biden dishonestly would paint this picture of people, coming out of the forest with their veins bulging in their neck and red faced, and they were, carrying torches and all this, and that the president said that they were fine people. None of that ever happened. But yet, because of the visuals, the visual language that Joe Biden used, the visuals with missing context and then false context added to it by the media, it became a very powerful force that has been highly, dangerous and destructive for our country. One of the most evil things I think the media has done, and
Yeah,
Joe Biden.
absolutely. And it really goes to, we have a lot of questions about Joe Biden's abilities.
Yeah.
And what I will say is that when Joe Biden wants to paint a ugly, grisly picture, he can do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually something he's done across his entire career.
Yep.
Now, it used to be
Like when he's talked about the crime bill way back when.
Yes. Yep. He painted a pretty ugly picture of the super predators, as Hillary Clinton called them, that needed to be put away. And even in the 70s, when he would join with segregationists on different issues, he would paint some pretty ugly pictures then too. Some things you just don't forget, Dustin.
Yeah.
And so I think that's sadly.
So that's one of the big ones. What are some of the other ones that you can think of that really were terrible? Visuals and context, and maybe even the language has been used around it that had a real impact.
Yeah, well, I think there's the drinking bleach hoax
Mm-hmm.
in particular. First off, it was never said. I mean, that is just so wild. But that
you have people to this day. We even had Republican candidates last year. We're like, don't get brought into the drinking bleach thing. It didn't happen, and they couldn't even see it because they had seen some CNN or even a Fox News bit on it, and they thought that they had actually seen it.
Yeah, and so, and then then they would couple it with, oh, these people died from drinking bleach and all this other stuff. And it was like, well, what is going on?
Which also didn't happen. I mean,
Yes.
The only thing that we know of is that somebody took fish food, some kind of, or fish cleaner or something like that, because it had a name similar to hydroxychloroquine.
Yeah.
But that's just, it's crazy. So for anybody who doesn't realize that that's false, that he never said that, he was talking about how light is used to disinfect. It's used as a disinfectant, which we all know sunlight's the best disinfectant, but it's actually true scientifically. And they are looking at ways to intubate people where they put a tube in and they have the light shine, and who knows how effective it is or anything else, but that's what he was talking about.
Yeah.
And it had nothing to do with drinking bleach or injecting bleach or anything like that. None of that ever happened, but the media created it, and a lot of the media believes it's actually true. It's really weird to watch them.
But that is a hoax that could actually kill people.
Yeah, totally. I want to tell one on myself. The Covington Kids hoax. When that first came out, I think it was like a Sunday or something like that when that came out. And I wasn't really watching the news too much, and I just saw it in passing. And I saw the deceptively edited visual of the young man standing on the steps in front of the Lincoln Memorial, and the older fellow, the Indian activist, and he's banging the drum in his face. And at the time, it looked like the kid maybe walked up and was like in his face or something like that. So I was like, that kid looks like he's being disrespectful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the media had cut off the the video going up to it, and then they had cut off the video after it. And when you see the whole video, you see that the guy comes up and he's just walking up, banging the drum in the kid's face. Well, that's crazy to think. And then the kid's keeping his composure while you have the nationalist group over the other side yelling racial epithets at the kids. And the fact those kids acted as well as they did, it was pretty amazing to see that.
Yeah.
And I at first was like, well, that kid must be just a punk kid. But then I saw the full thing. So the truth is every single person's going to be affected by images, visuals. It's going to have a powerful impact on you. When someone tells a story a certain way and has imagery, it's going to affect your thinking. It's every single human is affected by this. What's one of the more, I don't know, entertaining ones, even though it's also terrible?
Yeah. So I was thinking, as we were putting this together, I was thinking about Jussie Smollett or
Juicy Smollett is
yes. Of course, for us, when we first heard it, I think you were the same way. But when I first heard it, and I heard about two African American Trump supporters in downtown Chicago, or wait, was two white supporters in?
no, it's two black gentlemen who were wearing MAGA hats
in downtown Chicago at 2 a.m. I'm like, well, that's false. Mm-hmm. I don't even know what else happened, but that didn't happen.
Yeah.
I mean,
at 2 in the morning or 1 in the morning or whatever it was. And what was Jussie Smollett doing going to
Subway
get a sandwich at that time? I mean, what's going on here? None of this makes any sense.
And but we were, at CNN jumped right in, telling us how terrible it was, and then of course we learned it was completely false.
Yeah, and painting the picture of it and everything else. This happened with the NASCAR thing also. Not too long ago. Somebody had a rope. I mean, this is just a typical thing to open and close a garage, and someone saw it and they thought it looked like a noose. And so that once you hear that this is what it is, and then you see the picture, you don't think, oh, that's just a loop on a rope to pull down a garage door. Mm-hmm. The context all of a sudden tells you the filter that you are going to look at this picture, and then you see the picture, and the picture will all fit towards that, but it's so highly persuasive. You don't think your lying eyes are telling you something different. You believe you believe your eyes most of the time, even though it's a very easy way to get to really get hoaxed, honestly. So one of the things about this for campaigns and why this is important is that it's a way to quickly communicate a message and to be able to quickly communicate a story as well through this. You can in one picture actually paint a whole story through this. Yeah. So we're going to talk about today. So, we've talked about how we think in pictures. So we're going to talk about pictures. We're going to talk about video. We're going to talk about vivid language, in particular visuals, and how that's going to be more persuasive. So when you talk about visual persuasion, we're talking from pictures to video to even the words that you say in a stump speech or the words that you say on a commercial, whatever it is, your words are also able to further the picture as you do that. So with that, I'd like to pull up a few pictures that can give people an idea. So let's see. This is a picture that tells a whole story that I think people will probably remember. Let's see. There you go. So that's from VJ Day and people and sailors coming back. And so that gives you the whole sense of what was happening at that moment. It's a very powerful image. The American people were waiting at home for our servicemen to come back, and there they are being reunited, and that tells the whole story. That's like everything that you need to know about that day is in that one picture.
Absolutely. That is an image, it's iconic, really. and there's a reason for that. That's basically what 4 years
Mm-hmm.
uh, symbolized in one day and one moment. Like this is why we did all of the other stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was to come home and for that moment. So that's the beauty of that as an image. So
And now another image that really tells a whole story in one thing is one that you suggest we pull up is this picture.
yeah, the man standing in front of the tanks in Tiananmen Square, and this image really to me symbolizes what one person can do.
Mm-hmm.
Think about this. This was an army that had cleared that was clearing it had cleared everything else out, and the rebellion was getting literally beat down.
Mm-hmm.
And here was one guy who had the courage to stand up and say, well, if I'm going to go down, it's going to be the world's going to see it.
Yeah,
And
this story, this also has a couple of design elements. We're going to talk about that here in a little bit. This actually, I think, employs the rule of thirds
yeah.
as well. So he's in the lower third of the picture, and then you see the whole. It actually tells the whole story. You can see the whole story pan out through the picture. Like it almost looks like it's in a timeline, which
Mhm.
is which is um, pretty interesting. You know what's about to happen next. So it tells a story. There's a beginning, there's a middle, and an end in this picture as well.
Yeah. And so you think about that. I mean, that's from what, 1989, I believe. And
Hmm.
you are looking at something that has stood the test of time. We just showed an image from 1945. So,
Hmm.
I mean, these are not just iconic images, but they tell a whole story.
Yep.
This basically took a rebellion uh, that no one thought could continue, and one guy said, "Well, not on my watch." I mean,
Yeah.
you can, and it also showed what some of these folks are willing to sacrifice for it, and so I think that it really tells all of that just in one image, which is pretty remarkable.
So here's another one. This is Winston Churchill, of course, iconic picture, and this goes to you have a sense of who he's being. We talked about this quite a bit. We talked about it yesterday. We talked about it last week in the interview prep crash course. We talked about it in the stump speech um, course as well. So you you can see right here on Winston Churchill's face the determination, the grit, and the power ultimately that he had, and the determination. Like all of that's there on his face. Sean, anything you want to comment on with his way of being and how what you're left with seeing the picture?
Yeah, it really does show a determination. I think is probably the best way to put it, and I think it also embodies the grit of the British people at the time.
Yep.
Um,
Stiff
that
upper lip.
yeah,
That's when
exactly.
that idea really began during the bombings of London.
Yeah, and it goes to leadership. I mean, you're never going to see Neville Chamberlain in a pose like this, right?
No. And it goes to their way of being. This is part of
Yeah,
when you're having your pictures taken. If you're nervous and if you're trying to get it perfect and you're in your head getting photography done for your campaign, you're not going to present this picture or
yeah,
whatever it is.
exactly. Who knows what was going on in his mind when this picture was taken,
Hmm.
but what we do know is that he was being resolved.
Yeah.
And
Now, there's someone who's been a great student of history and of visual persuasion. And I would say, a lot of the media, never gave him credit and don't realize, what a student of history he was and how much he got visuals. Probably one of the best leaders on visuals ever, and also a student of Churchill.
yeah,
And we can see that here momentarily. So, who do you think is the student of Churchill who maybe even brought the Churchill bust back into the Oval Office?
I'm going to say it's the 45th president of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
Yes.
Um, and he's actually another great example. So not just this image here, which shows resolve in the time that we needed it as a country, but he really is great at painting a visual picture with his words.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what do we talk about? The big, beautiful wall, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just think about what you picture. Just, you know, that's all how he ever described it, except whatever wall you had got 10 feet bigger.
Yeah, if the Congress came back to him and he didn't like what they had to say, he's going to just add another 10 feet.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I could see the actual 10 feet get added to the top of it.
You're like, wow, okay, this got bigger.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it was, you know, I think there is something about he got that it really goes across all mediums.
Mm-hmm.
So wherever he's at. Now, you know, he's certainly a lover of television and video, just from where he comes, but he makes it work in all mediums. It's truly remarkable. You know, you and I went to one of his rallies right before the election, and he was big on having the videos going during and whatnot, which is a real departure from past events like that, where you would have just the cavalcade of speakers come up to the mic, and you know, you'd hear them drone on for a while, then they'd play music in between, then there'd be more speakers.
Yeah, at Trump rallies, they make those people come up and speak like hours before.
Yeah,
which is great because nobody really wanted to hear them, unfortunately.
Yeah,
and it might actually, just so people know, kind of behind the curtain, to do those events, most of the time that has to be paid for by one of the national parties. So if it's Democrats, it's the DNC. If it's Republicans, it's the RNC. And they have to be, quote, victory events or whatever we call it any given time. But it has to be a joint effort between candidates. So you have to have multiple candidates there for it to be paid, typically, unless the laws change like in the last few months. And that means you have to have these people that nobody cares about seeing up there on the stage at some point, which sometimes the Democrats, the way they do it, they're like, oh, we have a vice president. There's two candidates. We're good. And they get what matters to getting out the vote. And if you get everybody to vote for your top of the ticket, then it will help everybody. Republicans tend to put a whole army of candidates on one piece of literature or on one stage, and it dilutes everything. In the Trump era, we kind of got past that, which was excellent and good. One of the things that he really got just over and over again, you've mentioned before, the White House in the backdrop during the Republican National Convention.
Oh yeah.
We've talked about his just ability to, I don't know if you remember that one time when the congressional leaders didn't show up for a meeting. And so he sat, they could have rearranged the chairs, but he sat in the middle. Then he had an empty chair to the right of him, an empty chair to the left of him. And he even had like pads of paper and like a glass of water ready for them. And then he had the Republican leaders on the other sides. Like they could have brought them together, but they decided that it was just better to show the empty chairs, showing that that's what you get from the Democrat Congress. And I thought that was a pretty powerful persuasion as well. Now, thinking about this, we've talked about visuals and video a little bit and how the hoaxes were impacted by this. But I'd like to go to visual language. And somebody I've mentioned a little bit recently because I've been studying some of his work is Paul Harvey. And Paul Harvey really is a powerful user of language to create pictures. So I'm going to bring that up next.
Excellent.
Harvey reads the same newswire copy that goes to radio stations all over the country, but he selects and filters and rewrites and makes it his own. He feels what he actually does is practice a lost art called radio.
I've never ever seen a picture on television or ever anywhere else that compares to the phenomenal pictures my brain can paint. I think radio is the ultimate visual medium. There is nothing anybody can do on that flat two-dimension screen. Nothing that compares to the phenomenal pictures that are painted by your mind's eye, stimulated by our beautiful language.
Mute. Yeah.
So
So
there you go. There's Paul Harvey and his unique way of speaking, of course, and then talking about how your words can really paint a picture in someone else's mind, and it'll be more vivid. And you mentioned it when you talked about the wall with Donald Trump. The way he talked about it, everybody had their own vivid view of a wall.
absolutely. And it was different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've talked about this, and I think this is one of the things to remember. Like, when we talk about speaking vividly, speaking visually, we're not talking about getting into the schematics of
Mm-hmm.
what you're talking about. You are really setting it up so that people, because what Paul Harvey said, I think was really true. I've never seen a picture on TV or anywhere else that compares to the phenomenal pictures my brain can paint.
Mm-hmm.
And so let your audience imagination run with it a little bit, and they're going to also help you create whatever it is that you want to have happen. And so when you're really painting a picture for your audience, and doing it in a way that that puts them in it,
Mm-hmm.
is really the thing you want to do. And then they get to say it kind of looks this way or whatever it is, and then be able to go from there. And so that is what's available, by painting it in a way that gives some latitude. So you say big beautiful wall,
Mm-hmm.
then it allows people to decide, oh well, what does this wall look like?
I'm curious, what did your wall look like?
Great question. Yeah, mine. Well, of course, it had big doors,
Mm-hmm.
because we were told it would.
Yeah.
But I pictured like granite, like stone, like hard to penetrate. These were.
Mm-hmm.
It was big. I would say it was probably, I kind of pictured something like 16, 18 foot to begin with, and then
Mm-hmm.
then it went to 28 feet, of course. um, and but I pictured something that was hard to get through, but that there were places that you could come through, and it's something that could be done legally.
Mm-hmm.
um, and so that's kind of what I pictured. Like, there, it was actually brought order.
Yeah.
So
Well, I'm curious from the people in the comments, what did your big beautiful wall look like when President Trump or then candidate Trump talked about the wall? What did you see in your mind's eye? For me, it was definitely a hefty, very secure wall. I imagined that on the other side of the border that there'd be graffiti and whatnot. I saw that in it as well, and I really thought it was a very sturdy wall,
yeah.
and a little bit gray, but like a gray granite. It was a nice material, of course, because it's a Trump project. It was always going to look very elegant. So I expected it would have great design elements,
Oh,
which we will.
I should say the doors were gold.
Yeah, of course, the gold. There were always gold doors.
Yeah, so
Big swinging, almost like Renaissance era
yeah,
swinging doors like that. Yeah, that's what I saw. We have a comment from the audience. Visual language is absolutely powerful, even for someone like me that was born completely visually impaired. Something that someone says with vivid visual language can paint a picture in my mind. This is why it is so important for us as candidates to tell stories with descriptive language to be visually persuasive. So, Sean, I'd like to get your thoughts on vivid storytelling and how you would, any like specific guidelines you give people.
yeah,
For
great question. Great question. First, you want to um, just starting in the middle.
Mhm.
So putting people right in the situation, whatever it is. So if it's out in the future, you want to put them out in the future with you.
Yeah.
Like,
James Bond movies do this really well. It's the cold opening of the movie has Bond in the middle of something. Something happened beforehand. There's something's going to happen in a little bit, but he's in the middle of a chase. He's in the middle of he's hanging from a cliff or something like that, and you know that something happened before that got him into the situation. But now you see him in the middle of it. He has to get himself out of it. That's a perfect example of what you're talking about.
absolutely. So because you start people in there right away, then you create a little context, like what it was like before. And so, let's just use an example. Let's say you've created the future that people are living into. So you say it's 2032, you're on the steps of the state capitol, you're walking out for the last time. And, in 2021, prices were going up. We were fighting through a pandemic, and confidence was at an all-time low. Okay. Then what happened? We came together, and out of that, we created a new era where communities, we work together on solving the issues of the day, like human trafficking and homelessness and the things that people weren't even talking about. And so what does that mean now? It means that we are living in a place where people have security, they have a roof over their head, they have the things that matter most, they're able to provide for their families, and they're getting the help that they deserve and need. And so they are getting to live the American dream that people only dreamt about just 10 years ago. So there you go. How's that?
That's good. Doing that off the cuff. That was excellent. So, and of course, here's the thing, and you did an excellent job on that, and you get to work on it. There's specific
Exactly.
stories that you have on your campaign that you really want to tell. Joe Biden had some staffer or somebody really work with him to create that destructive and divisive, vivid imagery of these people coming out of the woods with torches and their veins bulging and all this, and really putting a visual to the lie of the Fine People hoax. And he was told even by reporters, even left-wing reporters, that wasn't true, yet he kept doing it. That's why Biden is maybe one of the most dishonest people we've had in the White House, but he does it with affability that he gets away with it a little bit. And, you also think he's stupid. So he couldn't be that smart, but he kept pushing that visual over and over again. Every single time he opened up his mouth, he did it. The only person who stopped it was Vice President Pence in the debate with Kamala Harris. She actually looked away in shame after he pointed out how racially divisive it was and that there was a hoax. And you saw her turn her head like this. And she did not mention it again. And Joe Biden did not mention it in the next debate because they had been caught, which is really powerful that they were able to blunt that. I wanted to acknowledge everybody, 90 shares already. So thank you very much for everyone who has been part of the Share Force. It's as simple as sharing the program, retweeting it wherever you're at. Thank you for doing that. Who knows who you might inspire to be that leader for their community, who might use these 5 forces of visual persuasion. Sean, before we go into those, any last little bit for the vivid storytelling that you would also, any other tidbits?
Yeah. So hopefully you saw in that, and again, it was definitely a rough creation there.
Yeah, no worries. You did a good job for just off the cuff. But there's starting in the middle. There's you don't have too many details.
Yeah. So, but you start in the middle. You paint what it was like in the past or before, and then what the future can or what the future is now because you did it. In the example of a creating your vision, and painting that for people, which we talked about yesterday. So go back, listen to yesterday's show. this is one of the ways that you can do that. And by the way, how long did that take? It took about a minute, right? So you can do it in a minute or two, no problem, and really set it up for people. And then you'll add, there will be some details that you'll want to add, but having too much detail is where it really falls apart.
Yeah.
Because
Unnecessary detail people don't want to hear
well,
about.
and it is the place where people can get caught up. So there's a reason that when Donald Trump talked about the big beautiful wall, he didn't tell you how big it was, or he didn't tell you anything else about it, or because people wanted to then call it a fence, or they wanted to call it this, and they wanted to call it that, and he said, "Nope, big beautiful wall."
Mhm.
Why? Because he got that if you got into the how it actually looked and what you ended up doing, that's where it gets picked apart, and that's where people get hung up in because they can see that. Where if you really are unleashing a little bit of an imagination,
Mhm.
even the example I had, right? You can imagine if you're in a place that has, you see some homeless people every once in a while. Imagine if that's not there.
Yeah.
Well, then what? Then what do you see? So there is something around that you can go, oh, okay, yeah, I can do that. But if you tell them, well, what we did is what New York City did, and put them on buses and sent them to Lincoln, Nebraska. I mean, that doesn't really.
And you can see that. That's a story that you can see as it's happening. That is something that is highly visual, and it is going to show up. I didn't do this before the show, but I'm decided I'm going to make captions for these five forces because we do need to have something visual. It's kind of
Yes.
important for the visual episode to do that. So I'll be doing that and being a little bit distracted as we go through it. But let's go
Oh,
through the five forces in a moment. What else do you want to add to
yeah,
that?
no, I was going to say what I'll do while you're doing that is I'll read all five, and then we'll start with the first one. So I think it's probably the best way to do that, and we'll be bringing those up as we go along. So just um, stick with us there. So the five forces of visual persuasion: one is context. Two is symbolism and storytelling. Three is meaning making and optical illusions.
Mm-hmm.
Four is aesthetics and design. And five is color. And
Yep.
so, and you're going to see those last two in just a moment if you're, for those that are watching. Um, the So when we talk about context, this is something we talk about a lot, Dustin, and it's something that is very important here
Mhm.
because you are setting the tone for everything that people are going to see and hear.
This is going to happen in language. It's going to happen in. It's going to happen in. For instance, your mail.
Yep.
Context is largely going to be the moment, what's going on in the country at the time. So there's part of the context, what people are seeing. It might be what's happening in your specific race. It might be happening based off of the headline, the big, beautiful headline title you put on your mail piece is going to give people the meaning of the pictures that they're going to see on that mail piece. So that's going to be a part of it. So context is always going to create the filter. Sometimes it's already in the environment and it's already out there. It's what the news is talking about. We don't have full control over all context, however, for other people, but we have an ability to impact it.
Yeah, I remember we had a mail piece that was what's name redacted hiding.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had an image of someone hiding under their desk, and all you could
Mhm.
see were their feet.
Yeah.
And you got, hey, this person really is hiding something.
Mm-hmm.
I want to learn more because that's all it said on the front side of that mailer.
And it told the story very, very quickly as to what was actually going on there.
Yeah.
So context. That's the first force, and we've talked a lot about it. We've talked about context is decisive. It is the number one thing. We talk about reframing the debate or framing the debate, and this is ultimately whoever has the the prevalent frame in any situation is probably going to be the leader in that situation. So your visual communication is really important. And by the way, visual communication, whether it's pictures, video, or vivid language, is going to provide a stronger frame, a stronger context. So if you have visual persuasion versus someone someone has conceptual persuasion, you are going to win.
Yeah.
It's why the kids in cages thing became such a thing back, 4 years ago, even though the truth is those were Obama cages, and they even used the Obama years to show those pictures, but that became a thing. And it's why even now, when the Biden administration has totally overrun our ability to care for the unaccompanied children, unlike anything that the Trump administration ever had to deal with, because they actually brought integrity to the border. The Biden people have kids in the worst possible situations that they could, but we can't get pictures. That's why they're not allowing journalists down there, is they get the power of visual persuasion.
Yeah, and and of course the media lets them get away with it. So that's the other part of that. So
So let's go into 5 forces of visual persuasion. And number 2, symbolism and storytelling. As we presented the pictures before, you could see the story being told in a number of those pictures. You can also see the symbolism. This is the kids in cages. That idea, when they said it, that was first and foremost context. When the media said those words, kids in cages, then when you saw people going through holding facilities that had chain link fences, that then made you think that those were cages, even though they weren't. Another place this happened, and it's I would consider it fake news. We make a distinction between rigging, election irregularities, alleged voter fraud, and actual court determined fraud. So all that to be said to Google and everybody else who wants to shut us down, we're being really clear. And you'll love this, by the way, because when we saw that Georgia facility, when they talk about the suitcases, a lot of conservative media said those are suitcases of ballots. Well, if those of us who've worked in politics a long time know those are just hard cases. I think there's an actual term for them, but they're that's what they are. They're hard cases that you usually move equipment, you move sensitive things. They're secure. Usually they have a lock on them. That's what those were. But when you heard suitcases beforehand, and then you saw the video, that was a perfect case of the context had an impact on what you actually saw. And the idea of, so going into symbolism and storytelling, the symbolism of suitcases, the symbolism of cages, that is, your brain does want to find patterns, and your brain is going to make meaning, which we're going to get into in a second, from what you see. And symbols have great power. So we talked about the White House behind President Trump at the Republican National Convention. That had great power. We use a lot of red, white, and blue. You can see it in everything that we're doing here. We have the Capitol right now behind us as we do this program that has a certain symbol to it. We have a flame of liberty next to political trade secrets, and whether people see that consciously or not, that's intended to handing over the torch of liberty to every generation. There's something there to that. And then the red and the blue have a symbolism. We're going to talk about colors in a little bit, but there's a symbolism to it. So over time and through history, we add meaning, we add symbols, and that is just going to have a certain impact on people and what they think. It's going to give people context. It's going to help people know what it is that you want to talk about. Sean, anything you'd like to talk about this, maybe from the area of direct mail, from videos, from anything that we might see in campaigns?
When you particularly, this is where having things like action taking place, even in your pictures, stuff like that, this is where you can really generate some of that. So it could be, maybe you're talking with a veteran who's wearing the Vietnam veteran hat or whatever. Well, that invokes some sort of symbolism of, it could be patriotism, could be support of the troops, it could be whatever it is in that conversation. And it goes along with whatever you might have in the actual text. But if somebody can look at, particularly in direct mail, and go and look at that, this is another area where thinking about one of our sponsors, Dustin, 10-cent texting, they go in, and this is where if you've got an image that tells a story and you really create it, and you can put it right there in that text message, your image, GIF, short video right there in there can tell that story, can create that symbolism that really makes a difference. And without saying much at all, you get, now I will say that their texts are great. You get up to 320 characters, so you really do get to, in the world of texting, you really do get to tell a story that you don't with some other. But even without that, with a great image, you are telling most of the story already.
Yeah.
And drawing them
Which
right
is why I don't understand so many people, and this is something, President Trump didn't get into the details of his texting campaign, and for good reason. He was leading the world, but they never used visuals in their texting, and I just don't get it. TencentTexting.com is much better than anything else out there on the market. It is remarkably better than anything. I mean, just anything. So many people do terrible texting, and it's the most powerful tactic right now. So I saw one of the texts that Tencent Texting did recently had an image. So talking about symbolism and storytelling, it was to local leaders about helping their communities with the vaccine, whether people needed the vaccine, wanted it, or whatever. But they were just there's a missing in the marketplace for people knowing how to actually go get it. Only the people who are willing to call 12 different entities know how to do it. So they had an image of a hero, and that hero, so this is where we talk about a picture's worth 1,000 words. Symbols have imbued in them over time and history all this meaning, all these things that we can see. So you see the image of a hero, all of a sudden you see service, you see contribution, you see the ability to be liked, honestly, which politicians like, and so on and so forth. So that was really clear, and it told a story where this person actually got to be the hero in the story to be able to make a difference for their community. So all of that was said in a GIF that lasted less than 30 seconds. But the truth is, even if you didn't watch the GIF for the whole 30 seconds, when you saw the hero, you got that symbol began the whole storytelling. So it's a pretty powerful thing, and you can just look for the symbols that can make a difference. In a picture, a family is a symbol, and we like to have pictures of families with our candidates, their own family, other families, because that tells something about what matters to you. So that's a symbol of something that matters to you. So symbols in storytelling, you can tell a lot. One of the most powerful ways to get people's attention and to symbols is babies and puppy dogs. And it's not surprising that those get a lot of attention, especially in digital media. So highly recommend people use something like TencentTexting.com for an organization that understands these principles and how visual storytelling is so important, and why it's important to have somebody who understands symbols and storytelling in their visual persuasion.
Absolutely.
Anything else you want to add to symbolism and storytelling?
No, I actually think this leads well into point 3. Which is meaning making and optical illusions. And just talk about meaning making for a moment. This is where you use the images. You were just talking about bringing, pictures of candidates with their family or other families. There is something people go, oh, okay, this means family. And to me, particularly getting connected with someone, this is where, if you are speaking to who they are and what they're interested in, and so it could be the people you're getting pictures taken with, it could be where these pictures are being taken, or these images or the videos being done, so you see it in ads, particularly the ads that are like more of the profile thing, right? You see them at City Hall if they were a city elected official, or you see them in a town square, or you see them, maybe at the boardroom that they work in, or walking in front of the office, or at the barbershop, wherever you see them, right? And they're doing, the candidates doing whatever they're doing, and they're having those conversations, and you go, oh, why is it, why are these things, similar Why do we see somewhat similar images in all these things? Well, one of the reasons is they're looking to connect with you
Hmm.
and tell you something about them and what that means. And so, what it means is it can mean responsibility, it can mean caring and family, and what it really depends on what it is, but it can mean any of those things, and that's what it's supposed to invoke out of that.
Yeah.
So,
So when I think about this force, meaning making and optical illusions, and we put the optical illusions in there to show there's the other side of it. So there's a wizard behind the camera, there's a wizard behind the words, there's a wizard behind the video. When you're the one who's creating it, creating the communication, the visual persuasion, you get the everything. All this is going to come together to create meaning because our brains are meaning making machines. Our brains are pattern recognition machines. We don't necessarily do it very well, which is why the optical illusions is something that we have here. Is our brains are going to try to make sense of whatever we're seeing and have it come to a point, have it have some kind of meaning. So the whole mix, the whole soup of all the different things, from the fonts that you choose to the pictures you choose, the way you lay out the pictures to the fonts, all of these different things are going to be part of the soup that gives people some conclusion out of it. And an optical illusion can happen. The hoaxes are basically optical illusions where you think you see something that you didn't see, but your brain is going to make meaning out of whatever you see. And if you have for instance, in direct mail, you have an unprofessional looking piece of mail, that even if they don't look at the words, they don't look even at the pictures much, it just feels cheap and it doesn't look good. Their brain's going to come up with the meaning of cheap, unprofessional. That's what they're going to come away from. There's a lot more underneath each of these. We're not going to go into everything, but suffice it to say, that's what the whole thing is going to be. No matter whether or not you intend for someone to get a certain meaning out of anything you communicate, they will always have a meaning out of it.
yep.
So much so that if you have done any of the optical illusions, the interesting things, you can go search on the internet. There's all sorts of interesting optical illusions. Um, and I have one that I'd like to show people at some point to make another point, but I can't tell you about it because that'll ruin it for you. So, your brain is always going to try to make sense out of whatever it is. So whether you're intentional or not intentional, people are going to come away from your communication with something. So you might as well be intentional.
I think about the optical illusions. I think about movies that have some surprise endings, and how it changes the way you saw the entire movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think about Sixth Sense or Usual Suspects for anybody who's seen those, right?
Mm-hmm.
See
Don't ruin them. Spoiler alert.
Well, I'm saying that when you see the ending, you go, "Oh!"
At this point, I think everybody knows what happens in the Sixth Sense.
Yeah,
But all of a sudden, you see everything differently, and that's a case of reframing, and the whole thing's been reframed, and they've done it intentionally to you. And throughout the movie, they've given you they've intentionally manipulated you to see things a certain way.
yep. And then you get it at the end, and
Yeah.
they're like, "Ah."
So I'm going to go into the number 4, which is aesthetics and design, and there's a lot underneath this, and you don't have to know all of it. So there's just certain things that look better than other things, and most of this is going to happen subconsciously for most people. Most people don't have a facile, easy ability to use these kinds of tools, but there's quite a few things. One of the things on aesthetics and design from a brain perspective, you want to put forward your imagery in a way and your message in a way that doesn't tax people's brains. The faster they can get the information, the better. And if they want to watch a podcast like this to learn about stuff in depth, well, that would be a different thing. But when you're trying to get somebody to listen to a 30-second ad, you're having them look at a text for about 10 seconds, or you're having them listen to your 2-minute stump speech. You're not doing a lot, and you have a lot you have to do in a short amount of time, basically. So you are going to want to be able to have your communication happen quickly without taxing their brains, because the more you tax their brains, for instance, really, really small font taxes people's brains, and so they're not going to read it very long. If everything is in all caps, that taxes people's brains, so they don't do it. If you do big blocks, like paragraphs long of text, people aren't going to read it. Do short sentences. We've talked about this with a number of shows, having sentence structure that is really simple: subject, verb, object. So these are all the sorts of things. If you want to have information go into people's brains quickly, it's really important. Pictures, of course, are the best way to do that. And visual language. One of the things you did with the vivid storytelling is that taking out all the extra, descriptions of things, you give them the only things you really want them to see in the picture in your vivid storytelling. Because otherwise it just taxes your brain. As you said, it distracts you. You're going to think about that unimportant thing that somebody just said. And I have a few other things on that, but anything on just what I've said right now that you'd like to add to, Sean?
Well, I think that's all important, and we were just talking about this in point 3 with the optical illusions. Here, you mentioned, like, being aesthetically pleasing to the eye is so critical for things like your direct mail and your really all of it, and how you set up yourself, like the presenting yourself well. Whatever, it could be, getting cleaned up. We talked about the shininess when it comes to being on camera and stuff like that. You really want to address that, because it makes a difference. And we talked about that in the debate episode with Richard Nixon and JFK. So these are the opportunities you have, and you just want to be mindful of it, and get like, oh, hey, this is something that can really lend itself to that. So, and readability is so critical. Being clear, concise, being able to be read quickly. I think we've all gotten the block of text altogether in an email where evidently, paragraphs don't exist, and it's one thing. And
so you know, if anybody sends me those, I don't read them.
Yeah, it is.
I would choose to use my brain power on something else than to decipher your block of code.
Yeah. It's like, I got to get myself in the right mental space to do it. It's like, okay, if I'm going to dig into this, it's going to take something. So
going to that, what you're also describing there is having some white space, and that's a good move into another component of pictures. And this is going to be part of the practical guide. This is one of the ways to turn into a really good photographer and a really good videographer, like overnight. So it's called the rule of thirds. And I would say it may be the most important thing that you could learn for photography. So, for anybody who just wants to take nice family pictures or take, nice landscape pictures, here's an example of the rule of thirds. So you see how it's made into 9 quadrants, and you have our some kind of canine down there, and it's looking off into the distance. So this tells a story as well. So you see the characters looking off into the distance, and maybe it's finds this landscape interesting, or maybe it wants to go for a swim. Who knows what it's doing? But you can see it looking off in the distance. But it's in the lower third of the picture. So for direct mail, or even for your videography, having your characters in different places and where they're looking, you can see that this character is looking towards the center. That's important. You don't want your eyes ever to be pointing away from the message. You always want them pointing towards the message, because people naturally follow the eyes. So that's an example. I'll have another one here in a second of the rule of thirds. Here's a young hero who is
not us.
Not us. Well, we're old heroes. There you go. Here we go. So you see, and it gives a sense of movement. I don't even know why it works. This is just something you can look into all different kinds of paintings through history, and this is going to be something that's at play in it as well. So, and oftentimes if you had an actual direct mail piece here, you might have a picture be the whole backdrop, and then over there in the white space, you have, when I say white space, the part that doesn't have anything in it,
Yep.
you might have a few different headlines with bullets underneath them because that helps you absorb the information quickly. And there you go. That's part of the message. For
That's
anybody watching on the podcast, I recommend going to one of our social media platforms or going to politicaltradesecrets.com and watching this. It will not work as well without that. The next one is I have here with another picture. So through all of these, you should get a pretty good sense of how to do this.
Yeah.
How to take your pictures to have them really work. So Sean, anything about rule of thirds? I know you have started taking photography classes, and it's something you're interested in doing. You mentioned it in our ultra learning course or our class that we talked about that.
Using the second image there, it really goes to something else that we talk about in the practical guide. We're actually going to cover most of the practical guide right here. So, which is action makes a difference. So you say, well, it's a still image. What do you mean action makes a difference? Well, there is something to be said for it. Looked like that the hero there was running. It can be walking, it can be listening, it can be doing those types of things that learning, speaking, talking, all those are actions that can be conveyed in a picture. And it can show the type of leader that you are and that you're portraying yourself to be, so that people can get, oh, okay, yeah, this guy, we had Senator Andy Zay on, and one of our favorite pictures of him when we worked with him in the past was one of him coaching.
Yeah.
And in the huddle.
I think he was kneeling. He was kneeling down there in the huddle, talking with all the kids, and you just saw it spoke to his service in the community, leadership, care, compassion.
That picture said it all. It really did. Like, you really got like, okay, who is this guy? There it was. And so, and that's what a great image can do. That's what a great picture, that's what a great video, that's what a great, even the storytelling, you could tell the story about what it takes to coach kids and really put you in there. Like, hey, we're at the end of the game, and whatever it was that he wanted to convey, that you get from that. And so there is something to be said for that, and that's something that, regardless of where you are, you can do in any of these mediums. So I think that's aesthetics and design are critical. It really is where you get to tell the story, and you get to tell a little bit about yourself. Like quality aesthetics and design really get to the quality that you're going to bring to the office. So why matter?
It's people aren't going to be able to put their finger on it, but they're going to be able to see it. They don't understand it until they watch something like this. They aren't going to see it. A couple of other things: if you're going to do anything that's in twos, it has to be pretty much perfectly symmetrical. Sometimes we'll do a side by side, but very rarely do you want to have things in twos. You want to have things in 1, 3s, and 5s. It's why when you give a speech, it's actually interesting to think about Churchill. He has the line, blood, sweat, toil, and tears. I think, anyway, there's some version of that. It's actually misquoted most of the time as blood, sweat, and tears, because very little do people remember 4s, they remember 3s. And there's something about this scientifically. What they think is that when you have things that are in 2s or in 4s or any kind of even number, your brain naturally looks to see if it's symmetrical.
Yeah.
So if you are not, if it's not perfectly symmetrical, it's going to look a little bit off. So that's why it's nice to have things in 1s, 3s, and 5s. So that's going to be something that's also going to be part of your visual. And there's about 100 different things. This is why having people like us who actually have studied this is important. But we're going to move into one of the main components of aesthetics and design, but it deserves its whole own force, and that is colors. So
Yeah.
you can see that and this goes into symbols and everything else, because ultimately language is connected to colors. For there's some idea that we haven't had the color blue in our language for a long time. Actually, if you go back to I think it's in the Odyssey, and how Homer talked about the ocean, he never uses the term blue in
Mm.
the whole thing. He talks about it being Merlot, and he talks about it kind of maybe like a purple or something like that. That there's and scientists think that maybe until we actually had the word for blue, that people didn't actually see blue. It actually had an impact on what you actually saw. So there's a real connection between language and color. Unless someone tells you what blue is, you don't know what it is. But that being said, so language and meaning and symbolism and all this is all very much connected. Even our biology is very connected to colors. And that's important because that can have an impact on what you think and what you do. So we have here, intentionally, we have red, white, and blue are the main colors that we have in almost everything that we do, because they're strong colors, they're powerful colors. Blue is a color that beckons people. It's also a friendlier color, but also can show strength. Red is one that can show strength. It can also be a color that, depending on the context, can tell people to stop. Obviously, there's a reason why stop signs have that. It gives people a sense of danger, but depending on the context, it can also mean power. It also can mean virility. There's all sorts of different things that come along with the different colors that you choose. One that is pretty much baked into our brains is green. Green is a color that beckons people forth.
Yep.
Scientists believe that it's because green means leafy vegetation. It's one of the ways that you can tell where water is. So there's a reason why it actually ended up being a color that meant go and like welcoming people. And then there's all sorts of, so I recommend people, you can look at palette colors on the internet. You can see what colors go together well. That can also give a sense of things actually fitting together. And additionally, you can look at what the most recent colors are that people find to be interesting. So something that is interesting, I have a couple books here. I'll just show one. There's a general sense right now, the orange on book covers sells more books. So burnt orange also is likely to have people be more likely to, if you have a button on a website and it's burnt orange, they're more likely to click that. Or if it's green, it could be another way to do it. Red, we have red buttons on lots of stuff, but that may not actually work the way that you hope it to. So there's a number of things with color, and it's a whole world that you can learn a lot from. Yellow is almost always a terrible color, depending on what you're doing, except if you're trying to be creative. A yellow pad has that impact. People can put a lot of thoughts down. So color has a big impact. It goes along with context. Context impacts what you derive from color, but also color provides context. It's one reason why prisons put pink on the walls, is that it calms people down.
Mhm.
So there's all sorts of things that go into this. And using pastels is going to tell people a certain thing about candidates. I don't care too much about candidates' logos or the colors that they pick, but when they pick weak colors, I usually encourage them not to choose those colors for their colors.
There is something, so particularly when it comes to the campaign colors, there is something to be said for being bold, having strong colors, being bold in that way. I was thinking this morning when I put on my shirt, it was about, it's springtime and it's something to, make you smile and whatnot. So, I was thinking, pretty springy day today. So there is something to be said for that.
I didn't mean to say anything about pink, and I see you have a pink shirt.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if everything was pink, then it would have a different
Exactly.
meaning.
So,
Yeah.
so, and I think that's something like if I were designing my yard sign or whatever, my logo, it would definitely be something bold and that can draw you in. That's also readable. Some of the other rules we talked about, but the colors that really draw you in, and you go, okay, that's because you want to show things like strong and force, and
Yeah.
not force, but strong.
And you don't want to pick colors that are hard for people to absorb. If you use harsh colors, it's going to be hard for
Yep.
folks. One thing I didn't think about in the aesthetics and design, one of the tools is anything that you want to have people focus on, have it look differently than the rest of it.
Yep.
And that is going to be surprising and draw people's attention to it. So there's a lot underneath each of these, and one of the reasons why to work with people who know all these things, you don't have to know it as a political leader. Clearly, someone like Donald Trump knows a lot of these things, and probably being in marketing for so long, he has learned a lot of this stuff. But it's not surprising he does a lot of things that are symbolic, that are powerfully visual, that hearken to our country's foundings, that show strength, that are patriotic. He is very clear about all the different things he does. He uses certain colors. You rarely see him without a red tie. That is something you almost always see him in. He dresses in a certain uniform. He always dresses in a suit. Unless he's golfing, he might have very professional golfing gear, but you're not going to see him in a relaxed setting, because that's going to have an impact on how you see him. So these are the 5 forces that we have looked at, and with the practical guide, the main thing that you can do if you want to have a lot of pictures in particular for your campaign is the rule of thirds. I think is the most powerful way to make sure you have good pictures. And with an iPhone these days, you can also, if you want to have people focused on the foreground and where you have the subjects of the picture, the candidate or the candidate's family, you can use the photography filter in there that will blur the background, and it looks like it's professional photography, and you can end up with some really great pictures. And I would suggest that people take lots of pictures with a good camera, good phone camera like that, and to use the rule of thirds and to think about what aesthetically looks pleasing. And you will know it sometimes without even having to think too much about it, because people generally know what they do like. And if you take lots of pictures, you might end up with a few that are good. Sean, what thoughts do you have for kind of a practical guide for what people can do?
Yeah, well, I think that is really one of the big ones. We really talked about the other things already. I would
remind people of them.
Yes, absolutely. So, look, it is action makes a difference. And it could be walking, talking, listening, speaking. And then one thing that we didn't mention is you want to take pictures throughout your campaign. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but campaigns seem to lack good photos, and so we really want to just bring that to the forefront. That this is something to have happen throughout your campaign. Really make sure that it is happening there, and because we've seen it so often that people come into a campaign with very few pictures, or the family pictures are definitely from a holiday.
Yes. Dad's wearing a Santa hat. We can't use that for the October campaign. It's just not gonna fit.
Yeah, they're like, why don't you people get together more? So you don't want it to be known when the time was that these pictures were taken necessarily. So really be able to tap into that, and then and so those are really the practical things to be looking at as you're looking through this. For more of these practical things, go to our website. And we have an article. It's a picture's worth 1,000 words. So do go check that out. It's something that we wrote there before. So go ahead and check that out. So.
On the taking pictures throughout the campaign and doing it with action, so that it makes a difference. If you're a certain level of a campaign, you're probably going to do a video shoot at some point. It is worth paying the extra few $100s. If you're going to be spending that much on a video shoot, to have an actual still photographer there to spend time on the campaign with you that day and taking still photography of you in all those action poses, because that's hard to happen. Most of the time when you're taking photos with your camera, your iPhone or what have you, you are going to be most likely posing. And that's just going to be what happens most of the time. So I would highly recommend adding photography, still photography to your video shoot, and not have the same person doing it, because then that's too much for them to manage, but to actually have someone else do that. And then as you're doing it on your own, taking pictures, use the rule of thirds. Use the blurring the background for your photography will help make it look like real photography as well. And to have a place where you can share all that together. Also take video throughout the campaign. I highly recommend that as well, with a high capture video camera. Your phone's going to be great way to do that as well. So highly recommend all of those things. Moving into, so if you have any questions, please do reach us at olsenstrategies.com, or email me at dustin@olsenstrategies.com, or Sean, SEAN, at olsenstrategies.com, because we can walk you through all of these things very clearly. And here's the thing: if you're going to get consultants like us or anybody else, make sure that they get these very basic things about visual persuasion, and start playing around with it in your language. Actually paint pictures with your words, as Paul Harvey said, that you can actually do that in such a way that's so vivid that people will remember what you say. All right, Sean, what are some other ways that people could possibly actually reach out to people, use these kinds of visual persuasion?
Look, absolutely. So if you are running for office, trying to get onto the ballot, it is important to have somebody that is out there for you, that is presenting in such a great way, that is putting the best foot forward for you in your campaign. So whether it be canvassing, petitioning, live calling, nobody does it better than Grassfire. They actually are focused on how the whole campaign reflects on you, and so have somebody that is focused on that be the ones working for your campaign. So it's www.grassfire.us. You get one shot at a first impression. It's what the whole show's been about. And so why not go out and have it be presented in a way that that is meaningful there with Grassfire.
And of course, as we mentioned in the middle of the program, you can go to 10centtexting.com, which is powered by Grassfire, and that's where you can really have that rich media message, that MMS message sent to your voters. Very few companies actually provide the ability to do rich media through text, so you definitely want to use them for that. And we mentioned Olsen Strategies for folks who actually know these sorts of things and use them in their campaigns. Now, I wanted to make sure that people remember that we're going to have Michael Rechtenwald tomorrow to talk about how algorithms and AI are affecting politics, how woke capitalism is affecting our country, and how it came about. He's also the author of Beyond Woke, which is his new book. He had Google Archipelago that we've talked about, which is the digital gulag prisons and the simulation of freedom. Also, he had his book Springtime for Snowflakes, which is all about his being removed as a professor from NYU because he was questioning the woke and the social justice gospel on campus. And that it just became untenable to still be a professor. And he finally had to leave after they put him on a leave of absence. He finally had to leave. So that's going to be on tomorrow. And then, Sean, we have Deborah Gordon on Friday, and we're going to be talking about belief, and we're going to be talking about faith and politics, and really getting a perspective of a citizen leader out there who sees needs in the community, and really working with people on how to really discover their beliefs and how that can impact their service.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great show, and so I'm really looking forward to that. Both shows, so make sure you're joining us the rest of this week. My goodness.
Yeah, and if you want updates on all of these sorts of things, you want the freshest political trade secrets possible, text me at 202-918-3345. We will be letting you know updates on the shows. You can also post questions throughout the shows to those. And then, that's the main way that you can do it. And then we also mentioned if you want to be a political trade secrets insider, go to politicaltradesecrets.com. Check out that article Sean mentioned before about a picture's worth 1,000 words. And we really do appreciate everybody who has joined us there. We have quite a few people at this point. Thank you to everybody who's shared. I think we're over 90 shares at this point. So who knows who's going to be impacted by that. Sean, any last thoughts you'd like to add as we begin to wrap the show today?
Yeah, well, I want to thank everybody for their comments, for getting involved in the conversation today. Really do appreciate it, and just thanks for the shares and being a part of the program. And look forward to having you with us the rest of the week. So.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. And here's some great comments here at the end. I guess we're at 91 shares. Woke capitalism equals communism. Yes, and that's, I think, his argument is that's actually how communism or socialism is actually being implemented, is through international companies that basically usurp the national governments. So also someone asked about interns and fellowships. We do have interns and fellowships. So actually email Sean, SEAN, at olsenstrategies.com if you're interested in a fellowship or internship. And we would love to have you and be a part of the team, and really to help us inspire and empower political leaders across this country. You get to be a part of that, and you get to learn all these things that we're talking about in our shows, and we really do appreciate people to do that. So thank you to everybody for being here today. Thank you for joining us for this time to talk about something that's very powerful, that is impacting all of us, which is visual persuasion. The media uses it. Politicians use it. You probably use it in some capacity, but it's something that's affecting all of us. And it's really important to know how it affects us in order to be able to be more effective and to make the difference that we want. So with that, we'll see you tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern time with Michael Rechtenwald. And thank you for being here. Thank you for helping reignite American patriotism. This has been another episode of Political Trade Secrets.
Join us next time by subscribing on iTunes, and get show notes and sign up for our newsletter at politicaltradesecrets.com.